Thanks for joining the CaFÉ webinar today. If you don't already know me, my name is Justine Chappell and I'm the Communications and Marketing Manager for CaFÉ. Today I'm going to give you an inside look at what it takes to set up your call template after you submit your call request and cover some tips for what you can include in your prospectus. The main goal of this webinar is to help you understand why we ask for certain details on the call request form, and then how we, meaning the CaFÉ team member who will set up your call, gets your template ready for you to use. So the key items that we'll cover today include how to complete the new call request form, how the CaFÉ team sets up your call template using the form, and then important details to include in your call's prospectus. So the first thing we're going to talk about is completing the new call request form. Many of you have probably done this multiple times, but I'm going to really kind of go through it to show folks that might be watching this video later on or right now that might be new to CaFÉ and need some more information about filling it out. And this is also going to help you inform, how this call request order gets turned into the template in CaFÉ. So if you don't already know, you can request a new call by logging into your CaFÉ admin account and clicking New Call Request. I'm just going to go ahead and open that in a new tab. You can also access this from the Help Center, or you can bookmark this URL here for future reference, just so you always have it. And so we're just going to go through this as if I am an administrator setting up a new exhibition and I need to create my call for entry. So of course, the first thing is the terms and conditions. I'm not going to go through this line by line or anything, but it's just important to know that by submitting this form, you are essentially ordering and authorizing us to bill you for a call. So by filling out this form, you are saying, I am ready to add a new call to my account and, pay for that as well. So read through the rest of the terms and click agree to get to the call details section. So a lot of this is self-explanatory. I'm just going to go through this as sort of like a demo organization and fill this out. Put in my organization name, the name of yourself, the email that you want the call request form confirmation to go to. This is important and you want to make sure this is accurate because after you submit the form, if you receive the email confirming that the form has been submitted, that's good to go. If you don't get that email, that's kind of a red flag and you'll need to reach out to us. So make sure that email is correct. This is also the email that we will reach out to you with any questions about your form. The new call name. So what I'm going to do here is kind of just set up a blank call for us to go through today, but we will talk about what it's like to duplicate the template from an existing call. So we're going to skip that for now, but for now we're just going to put in, a new kind of call name. We're just going to keep this very generic. So at this point, I'm going to say, no, I don't want to duplicate the template. I'm just going to make a fresh new one. Would I like my call to be public and appear on the CaFÉ call listings page? Yes, I want this one to be public. If you choose no, that means that you are setting up a call that's going to be invite only, and you're going to be distributing a passcode where only those that you're allowing to apply can use the passcode to access the call. This just helps us know when we set up your call if you need help turning that invitational private listing setting on. And then there's a question about getting information about promotional e-blasts. If you want information and you click yes, that will simply send you a follow-up email where you will submit, it gives you a link to submit the e-blast request form. So by choosing yes here doesn't guarantee you or doesn't put you in any queue or anything to get set up for an e-blast. You actually have to fill out the e-blast form, but this means that you'll get sent information about that service and the link to request it. I'll go ahead and say no for now. Moving on to the next page, we're going to choose the jury type for a call. So I know that this is one of the more complex things to understand with CaFÉ, especially if you're not familiar with it. But once you get it, once you kind of are using the call a few times, you kind of starts to make sense. Basically, you can read this, next time you fill out the call, or maybe you already have. Essentially, just the quick review difference between scoring by art and scoring by application is that scoring by art means that each individual image or work sample an artist submits is going to be separated into an individual application that will be scored and judged separately. So this is really good for artwork exhibitions where your jury is reviewing artwork and you're choosing which individual pieces to include. Scoring by application is where you're looking at the images or the work samples an artist submits as a whole, and it gets grouped together into one application. This might be for public art programs or things where you're jurying an artist as a whole based on their portfolio. It can also be used in some other cases to score artworks that have multiple images to convey that entire artwork, so you're grouping those images together. But that's the very basic difference between them. What I want to note on the form is that we now have this kind of rundown of each one. It is our goal that you choose the right one, and it is our goal that you get set up with the one that makes the most sense for your opportunity and your call for entry. So what we've done is added recently a few different questions to help you choose the right jury type. So these, next 3 questions are really just kind of helping you determine what jury type to do. This also helps us when we're reviewing your new call request to verify not just the jury type, but also based on the information you're providing in these questions, if that makes sense, to make sure you chose the one that we think is best for your call or the one that you are confident that is the best one for your call. So the first question is asking, what describes your final selection? Are you reviewing the portfolio as a whole or individual pieces? In this case, I'm going to select artworks because I want to just set up a generic artwork exhibition. The next question asks about, are you evaluating as one rather than individual pieces? Kind of the same question, just worded a little bit differently to kind of get you in a different mindset about how this will work. So either yes, I'm judging as a whole, or no, I'm judging each piece. In this case, we're judging each piece. You'll see we've got a suggested jury type now. And then the last question, am I accepting multiple views of the same artwork? So while I might be selecting individual pieces of artwork, I might need multiple views of that artwork, in which case those views need to be grouped together. So that might be an indication I need scoring by application instead. That's getting pretty complex, but in this case, we're just doing one file per artwork. So I'll click single view. And then this is the actually most important question: how should your entries be organized and juried? And this is the one where I'm actually choosing scoring by art or scoring by application. And this can't be changed once the call is published. So once we set up your call template in CaFÉ, we'll set it to the jury type you select. You have until the time the call gets published to change that if you realize it's set up incorrectly or you want to change how you're going to evaluate. You have until then. So we'll choose scoring by art, and then it's just doubling down on making sure you understand that it cannot be changed, just so that we cover our bases there. So we'll go ahead and go to the next page. This one talks about application open dates and fees, stuff like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of insert, when I hope this application will open by. Let's say next week. That's pretty quick turnaround, but I can just put that in there for now. Let's just say I'm going through September here. If I'm charging an entry fee, I'll click yes and put in the cost. Let's say $15. Am I charging an additional media fee? Especially because this is a scoring by art call, I can charge an additional media fee. So I'll say yes, let's say just $2 or something. And then the next question asks about, since you're collecting entry fees, if you authorize CaFÉ to deduct the cost of the call, so the call module fee, from the fees that you're collecting from artists. You can either say yes or no. If you say no, you'll be asked how you'd like to pay up front for your call, whether that be credit card or check. Let's just say, let's do auto deduct. And then for those additional fees that I'm collecting, do you want to enroll in direct deposit? Or if you're already enrolled, you can kind of select that. If you select yes, you'd like to enroll, just like the eBlast question, you'll be sent information about how to enroll and fill out our forms, our secure forms for your banking information, and we'll get you set up. I do encourage direct deposit. It makes things really easy and you don't have to track down physical checks. One thing though, if you were to say that you don't have an entry fee, you will be asked to pay up front, obviously, because you won't be collecting any fees. So just be aware of that. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I get this back to what we're actually going to set it up as. Say yes, and we'll say I'm already enrolled. And then I'll click next. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention on that page, let's go back here. It's important to know that like you might not know exactly when the call is going to open. You might not have the deadline set ready to go. You just want to add this call template to CaFÉ. Maybe even the name of the call is going to change, but you just want to get this order in. That's fine. You know, everything except the jury type and the media requirements can be updated by you. So that is all right if you don't exactly know what what your timeline is gonna be, or if you need to change things. Submitting this form here is just kind of telling us that you want to add this template, but then you can go ahead and change things as needed. So speaking of media requirements, that's our next section. And the first question just asks you, what types are you going to collect? Image, audio, or video, combination of any two, or if you're going to do all of them. If you are a call that is collecting only writing submissions, for example, you might not need to collect work samples in the form of images, audio, and video, so you might not have to do that. That one's pretty rare, but it is an option. Go ahead and choose all just to kind of show you what it's like to set up all of them. Now, when you're filling out your minimum and maximum, you might have a good idea and you're ready to, plug in those numbers. Sometimes it can get confusing when it comes to the overall number of work samples versus individual file types. One tip I have for you all is to actually fill out this form from the bottom up instead of the top down, and you'll see why in a second. So if I'm thinking about the total number of samples that I want to collect from artists, we're doing a generic artwork exhibition. I'm just going to say I want, every artist, of course, to submit at least one. That'd be great. And let's just say up to 5. I don't want more than 5 entries per artist. So that's my total overall. The next thing I'm going to do going upwards is just look at, of those 1 to 5 total, which one should be audio, video, and images. In this case, I'm going to say, I don't really care if they submit all video or all images. They can do a combination of anything that they prefer. In which case, for each file type, the minimum needs to be 0 because that's saying you're not requiring at least one of those 1 to 5 images or work samples, to be audio, video, or images. So in a case where someone wants to submit all audio but no images, I can't put images as a minimum 1 because then they'll be required to submit at least 1 image. So I'm going to set those all to 0. And then the maximum, I still want to make sure that they're only submitting 5, but the total maximum 5 can be all video, so I'll leave it maximum 5. They can be all audio. They can be all images. If you wanted to, limit audio and video submissions, maybe you say, okay, only 2 audio and video files per artist, and the rest would need to be images in this case. You can do that. But in this case, we're just going to keep it nice and wide and open for artists to submit what they want. So these work samples will be, the requirements will be set up in your call template exactly as you enter them on the form. So just be careful and just note that, once you are working in your call and you realize something needs to be changed, you can reach out to the CaFÉ team and we can update that for you. And that is what it's like to submit the form. Before I click submit here, I'm going to reiterate just like what I said, if things need to change after you submit the form, that's fine. We can work with you and you can update things in CaFÉ. However, if you feel like you made a mistake on the form and you submitted it already and you realize, oh, I need to change the deadline date, that was wrong, or I made a mistake in the call name, please don't submit another call request form. That's because you would be submitting a second order to our team, which gives us in the queue, the notice to bill you for a second call. Usually we can catch instances where it's a duplicate and we see it's just updating some information, but that's not always the case and we can't guarantee you won't be billed for those separate order forms. So if you have a mistake made on your form, or if you realize something was wrong on it, instead of sending us a new form with the correct information, simply email us and let us know, hey, I just submitted the form, but I needed to, have this as the media requirements or this as the entry fee instead, and that, we can update that for you. All right, so I'll go ahead and submit this. And once this goes through, you'll get the confirmation on the screen here. And I'm going to kind of ramble for a couple seconds because I'm going to wait for that email to come through live so I can show it to you. So give me just a second to wait for that. Again, the confirmation email needs to be something you look out for because it tells you that the form was submitted properly. If you don't get the email within, let's say, usually it should only take 5 minutes maximum, but let's say give it a half hour. If you don't see that email come through, instead of just waiting and hoping we received it, go ahead and reach out to us to see if we did receive it. We don't want you to waste any time waiting around for something we don't know you need. So we want to make sure your call is set up. That would be great if you just reached out if you don't receive it. All right, so I got the email. I'm going to pull it into our screen share here. And you'll see you get the email, thanks for submitting the call request. The copy is down below. And you'll see you get the form with all the answers that you submitted it. I'm also showing you this because this is what the CaFÉ team uses to set up your call. Your form also goes into various queues in our various software that helps us know, you're ready to set up your call, gets us in the queue to be billed, all that good stuff. But we look at the form just like this to be able to set up your call template. And that's what we're going to do next here. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to open up CaFÉ. And this is something new. I don't think I've ever showed this on a webinar before. This is what it looks like when the CaFÉ team member signs into CaFÉ. So you're seeing the super admin side of CaFÉ, and that's the only way I really can show you what it's like for us to set up your call template. So you might be seeing some additional menu options here, and you'll get an inside look at some of the additional things and controls that the CaFÉ team has when it comes to your call. So what I'm going to do now is open up the licensee page for our demo webinar account here. This is just the page that accesses the information for your account. And this is where I go once I know that you need a new call to add that template to your account. So I'll go to your account and I'll click add new call. And this is what it looks like. It's the same thing you see, but it's blank. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the form answers that you submitted to be able to set up the template for you and get it ready to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reference, the organization name and the call name to be able to fill out that detail for you. So I'll enter that here. Usually do a good copy paste situation, but I'm just going to go through this. We'll put in the call name for you. This makes sure that it's easy to be referenced when you access the template. But we're not going to insert any other information for you. We're just going to set up the call name. We'll go ahead and put in the dates for you. So referencing the accept applications date and the application deadline, I'll jump back here and refer to those dates that you inserted on the form. So let's say they want to open by next week and the deadline will be at the end of September. That's great. And then if I did see that you wanted your call to be private, I can turn that on for you. And that's pretty much it for this page. We are going to skip the jury type for now, but we'll come back to it. And then I'll click create call. And that's what it's like for a CaFÉ team member to add your call template to your account. At this point, if you were to log in to your account, you would see this new call template in your current events section of the event dropdown. You see, obviously, it's pretty blank. Me as the CaFÉ team member, now I have a couple things I need to do to finish setting up your call template. So I'm going to go to the super admin tab. This is something you won't ever see. The first thing is the work sample requirements or the jury type. Let's do the jury type first. I'm going to reference your form. I'm going to say, okay, they want, where is the questions? Right here. They want scoring my art. Okay, cool. I'm also going to verify the questions. Did they select, okay, they want individual artworks. They're judging each piece on its own. Single view, great. That all matches up for me. If I saw something that was a little inconsistent, I might reach out to you and say, hey, you selected this, but it doesn't really make sense for the questions that you answered. Let's talk about it and make sure you get the right one. So in this case, we're all good to go ahead and select scoring my art. I'm going to save that. Then the next thing, I'm going to look at the work sample requirements. I'm going to take a look at the form. Looks like we need all images, audio, and video. Looks like overall I need 1 to 5, with each file type being 0 to 5. Great. So I'll go ahead and set that up for them. And we'll do 0 to 5 on everything. Overall, though, we need 1 to 5. Again, if something looks really inconsistent or really odd, I might reach out to you and see, if this is correct or if you need some adjustments. Go ahead and save that. And then that is all set. So now if I go to event information, and when you go to event information, you'll see your jury type is set up, and under application editor, the work samples are set up. The other thing you'll notice is the call status. So usually when you first get it, it's set to not published. Obviously, you need to submit the publish request in order for that to publish. If you are paying up front for your call fee, meaning you're not collecting entry fees, or you are collecting entry fees, but you prefer to pay up front with a credit card or check, I will go ahead and set this to pending, because that will mean we have yet to receive that payment. And so when I refresh the call here, you'll see that your call status is now pending. When the CaFÉ team receives your payment, even if your call is not ready to go live yet, we'll go ahead and change it's called front end status, back to inactive, so that your call status overall becomes not published. And that tells the CaFÉ team member who is going to be reviewing your call when you are ready to publish that, the payment's been taken care of, and essentially the call status being pending gives us a warning to be able to check for your payment before going live. All right, so that's, I forgot one more thing. So we did the work sample requirements. The other thing I'm gonna do is set up your entry fee products if you included it. So I'll refer back to the form. I'm gonna say, okay, it looks like they need an entry fee of $15 and an additional media fee of $2. So I'm gonna go ahead and just set that up for you, just so it's, set up. We asked for it for a reason, so I'm gonna go ahead and add that for you. I'll put in a generic name. Some CaFÉ team members have different naming conventions they'll put in the items for you, but feel free to update it. And then it looks like we got a media fee. Oops. So I'll put that here. Not type. Make that set to media fee. Now it's going to be your responsibility to make sure that the entry fee is set to the entry fee type and the media fee is set to the media fee type, and that what you included on the form is set up correctly. The CaFÉ team are all humans, and so sometimes mistakes are made. So it's up to you to verify that all the information, including the media requirements and jury type, all that good stuff, is entered correctly. So that is basically all that we do when we are ready to set up your call. We've referenced all the information on the page, and we've set up the call template in a bare bones scenario so that you can take over and put in the rest of the information. Before we talk about what to include in your prospectus, though, I do want to revisit the copying or duplicating situation. So one of the cool things about CaFÉ is that we can copy a call instead of creating a new, fresh template every time. And that helps for exhibitions or events that might be year over year, where it's the same situation, same event type. You just, obviously, it's a new year, so you're setting that new one up. Or if you just have various things that are very general for your accounts, for your account and costs for entry that are the same, but it might not be, a yearly thing. It's just a new opportunity and you want to leave some of the stuff the same, you can ask us to duplicate it. So again, back on the form, you can indicate, let's go to the next page. You can indicate if you want us to copy it over. So you would answer this question, would you like us to duplicate? And you'd say yes. You would give us the name of the new call, or you give us the name of the old call that you want us to go in and duplicate it. So make sure it's, matches what's in CaFÉ so that we can find the right one. And then you would be asked if you want to keep the jury type and work sample requirements to the same. So you can click yes or no, keep those, or, and if you say yes, then you won't be asked to insert the jury type or work sample requirements. If you click no, though, and you say, I want to essentially change the work sample and jury type, you'll be asked on the form to include that, in which case we'll update the new template with that new information. So let's say we submitted this form, we're copying over a previous call. Let's go into I'm going to go ahead and find the call. Let's say we're going to copy this sculpture exhibition. As a CaFÉ team member, instead of adding that new template, I'm going to go into the call editor, go to my handy dandy super admin tab, and we have the option to copy and archive the event or just duplicate it. Copy and archive means that the current call we're copying will be archived. So if it is like a yearly call, that's really handy to be able to just go ahead and put that old one away, and it doesn't get lost. It's just in your archived events list. Or if I can tell that this current call is currently open, or it's not ready to be closed yet, I can just go ahead and duplicate it. I'm going to go ahead and I'll just click copy and archive. And I can put in the name of the new event. Let's say this is going to be 2026. Click copy and archived. And then that will be set up for that account. And we've got this new one, 2026 here under current events. We've got that archive list is going to take forever to load. So I'm not going to do that because this is everyone's counts on here. So we got the current event going. And if I go into the call editor, everything is copied. So all the information is still there. I don't have to start over from scratch. All the application questions will still be there. The products will be set up. The dates will automatically adjust to the next year. It'll be, exactly 12 months, but if you have a call copied and the team member is setting it up for you, they'll reference your call form to say, okay, this is the updated deadline date, and they'll actually update that for you. But then again, it's going to be your responsibility to go through and make sure that all the information is correct for this new call, and including things in the long description and requirements that might be different. You have to check all this info. And similarly, scoring, jury type media requirements. I'm repeating myself a lot here, but again, referring and making sure that that is correct. So that's what it's like for us to copy the call. It makes it easy for us. It makes it easy for you. But of course, if you want a fresh one, we can always do that too. So that's what it's like for us to set up a call template. Pretty easy. Before our next section, I'm just going to reopen our new call that we set up. Here we go. And I'm just going to reference this blank call as we go through our next topic, which is talking about what to include in your prospectus. I'm going to talk about what to include in your prospectus. A lot of this might be review if you're used to this process, but I hope, maybe there's some good recommendations or insights that you gain. I'm going to first talk about, the bare bones necessity for what you need to include in order to publish your call on CaFÉ, and then just make this, a standard call for entry that artists will be able to fill out and successfully submit. And we do have a checklist in our help center. I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat. Sometimes the link can be a little messy if you're accessing it from a URL, but it's in the chat now, and I'm going to insert it here. This is available in the call setup guide in our help center. This, again, is the bare bones list of what you need to be able to publish your call. I'm not going to go through it, but I just wanted to share this as a resource. Actually, we are going to go through it, just not on this page individually. But let me share a list here. So the basic checklist, includes the event information, application editor, and product editor tabs. Self-explanatory there. So in the event information, we need to make sure all the info fields are completed, whether that be the contact email, phone number, the long description, eligibility criteria, all those fields that are required are filled out. I want you to verify the important dates, the additional settings, and the jury type. Once again, just making sure it's accurate. In the application editor, again, verifying media requirements that are correct, and if they're not, reach out to us and we'll update them for you. You can set up categories if you're using them, so if you do need categories, make sure you've turned that on. That's in the application editor here. If you turn that on there, then you'll start adding the categories that you need. And then the artist statement, make sure that is set up. I'm going to be flipping back and forth here, so excuse me. But the artist statement, if you want to collect those, you turn that on, put in additional instructions if you want, and make sure that's saved. Same thing with form questions. Make sure you're building out application questions that you want to ask the artists. You don't necessarily need to have a form question, but most artists are used to seeing something, even if it's just a simple question of, tell us a little about yourself, your artwork, or it just could be anything, regarding policies that you need to reiterate on the form itself, whether it's information about an opening reception and you're going to see if they're available, put something on there if you want, and if you don't, that's okay, but it is usually expected. And then again, on this checklist, verifying that your products are set up. Let me go back here. Make sure that your entry fee is set to the entry fee type, the media fee is set to the media fee type, and this means checking that the fee type is set to such. We do have two other fees types, other and admin. The other should only be used for post-jury fees. Now, what is that? Post-jury fee is a participation or handling fee most often for artists that are invited to the event. So after they've paid their entry fee, they submitted their application, you juried the artwork, you've invited artists to participate in the exhibition or the event or whatever it is, and then you need to have them go back to CaFÉ and pay an additional fee. Whether it's like a shipping fee or, a booth fee, if you're using CaFÉ for that, that's a post-jury fee. So only set that to the only fee should only be used for that. An admin fee is for optional fees at the checkout process. So when an artist is submitting their application, they can pay for an admin fee, which would be optional to them. But that is usually used for, selling catalogs or selling membership dues on CaFÉ if you're doing that there. Could be used for anything like that. But again, it's optional. You can't require artists to pay for an admin fee. And that's basically the basic checklist. You can also set up coupons, things like that. But as long as all of this is done, you should be good to publish your call. But I do want to provide a few other tips and recommendations for what to include in your call. We do sometimes get asked, what should I include in my eligibility or my, description? And here's some information. Of course, this is not going to be an exhaustive list of things you can include, but just some common things we see. So this is basically what I'm going to be sharing is information to include in your event information tab. Let's go here. Event information tab. This is your prospectus. Anything that's on this tab is essentially info for your artists in order to get them excited about applying, get them informed about what they need to prepare, make sure that they're eligible. And so filling out, especially these fields on the left, is what you use to create your prospectus. This then becomes your call details page. So that's that URL that you'll get when your call is published. You can also access that same URL by just clicking preview call, and that takes you to the URL. You can see here, that's what will be your call details page link. Obviously, this one is empty because we have yet to fill this out, but this is what we are building out with these recommendations here. So let's go back to our presentation. In the long description field, this is your chance to describe the call for entry, the opportunity, the event itself in as much detail as possible. That gets artists excited about it and gets them informed about what's going on with this opportunity. So you can talk about the theme. You can talk about the location, if it's going to be in person or online or both, where it's going to be. If it's going to be this really cool event at this botanic garden, include that information. Put in key dates. So reiterate your application deadline. Yes, it's available on CaFÉ, but it's, if you're putting it in the writing section, written section, that is just important. It's kind of gives artists another chance to look at that. You can include other dates like a drop-off or shipment date, deadline, receptions, if it's a public art call or something that has different phases, maybe there's a proposal phase, finalist phase, shortlist phase, you can include that timeline. If you have special instructions for artists, consider including, if you have any requirements for how to ship their artwork, very common one is no packing peanuts. So you can include that or any other specifications you have. Special instructions for completing the application. You can give artists info about what you like to see in their application, what the juror is looking for. And then, we'll talk about application requirements in a second, but you can just kind of generally give special instructions for that. Same thing with artwork images. Obviously, CaFÉ has its own requirements for what to upload. But if you have specific things about the artwork, like make sure the artwork images depict the artwork that is without a frame or with a frame or something like that, you can include that special instruction. You can also include stuff about the jury process. This makes it so that things are nice and transparent and artists are aware and expecting what or know what to expect when it comes to their artwork being selected. So that can include, the number of jurors or the juror info or the bio, certain selection criteria if you know that ahead of time, what's going to be evaluated in the artwork. You can also include what's in it for the artist. Do you have certain prizes or awards? What kind of exposure opportunities would this include if they're selected? If they need to be members or if they can get membership by being included. Certain things like that that really get artists looking forward and wanting to apply to your call for entry. Again, I can go on and on with this list. I didn't want to include too much, but this is just a general idea of what to include in specifically the long description portion of your call information. The next one, application requirements, we'll talk about that. So we recommend, reiterating your work sample requirements. Again, yes, on the call details page, it's clearly written out here. This is what they'll be required to submit. But maybe you want to include that in a more conversational tone, so you can include stuff, verbiage, like each artist can submit 1 to 3 images or artworks for consideration. Maybe you say, like, we are not accepting video at this time, but include, however many images you're allowing. Reiterate that so that when they are scrolling through your details page, they come across that information in the right section. If you are using categories in the application, you can define those for them. Maybe you have really specific site locations, so you want to include a description of each category that you're going to be setting up. Maybe you're saying, hey, we are going to be jurying based on individual discipline, where we have a ceramicist reviewing ceramics, we have a painter reviewing paintings. So you kind of describe that in your application requirements that they'll be asked to specify what category they're applying to. And then the self-explanatory application requirements include a list of things that the artist will have to prepare in order to fill out the application. Sometimes they get to the application and then they're like, oh, we've got a lot to prepare. I'm not ready to submit anything yet. If you give this information to them ahead of time, they'll have a much better experience actually applying. So you can include things like you're going to be asking for a resume, headshot, references, statement. I could go on and on again with that, but just list that out on the prospectus. All right, and then the next field that you'd be filling out is the eligibility criteria. This is where you want to specify who can apply and what artwork can be entered. So pretty obvious, but who can apply might be based on the location. If you have, it could be based on age if you have a specific call for entry for, artists over 50 or for emerging artists, or that would be experience level. So just specify that there. And then you can also even go further and talk about what artwork can be entered, whether you are allowing or not allowing certain mediums or disciplines. Maybe it's a small work show, so you have dimensions on how large or small the artwork needs to be. Maybe you want to make sure artwork has been recently created, so you might put in a date range or a year range for, how long ago the artwork can be have been made. Pretty relevant these days, but certain things about you can include what cannot be entered. So the big one is whether or not you allowed AI generated or AI assisted artwork. That's completely up to you, but just put that in there. Artists might be wondering these days, especially if they do work using AI generated things. Just put that in there, make a decision. Even if it's just a blanket statement of not allowing it, that's completely fine. Maybe you don't allow collaboration, something like that, and you also need to determine and specify who can exactly submit. That's eligibility, and that kind of, is there so that artists can understand if they are able to apply. If they're not eligible to apply and they end up submitting their application, you can at least refer back to your criteria and say, hey, we had this all laid out for you. Unfortunately, you're not eligible. This was shared with you up front. Hopefully you don't get to a point where you're arguing with someone about that, but make sure you outline it all from the beginning. And speaking about outlining things, your rules and terms, this is the final section on that part of the event information page. So this is that agreement that artists need to agree to in order to access your application and be able to apply. So you want to put things here that an artist needs to agree to, whether that be your payment policy and refund policy. So reiterating your fees, reiterating, what qualifies for a refund if you are allowing those. If you have something that you really need to make sure artists are submitting work that's original to them, go ahead and put that in there. That helps cover your base there. Image usage. So this is just good to include so that artists are familiar with how you will be using the images that they are submitting to your call. It might be an online exhibition, so you might need to stipulate how that image will be used and what proper credits will be given. And just to shout out an example, when we did our 50-year 50 artists call for entry that we hosted with our artists, we did include kind of image usage into our rules and terms to say, hey, while your artwork image might be used in the exhibition, if you're not selected for the exhibition, we still might use your images to highlight the work of the great artists in our community on our social media page or in other places. So by applying to this call for entry, you are granting us the ability to use the images in this way. But it also included, every image that's being used will be properly credited to the artist and the photographer. So, we included all that information up front. You might also include things like commission information, and then like if you are charging a certain amount for commission, if a piece is sold, and then just any other general organization or gallery policies you might have, just put that all in there so artists can review it. And essentially you are saying they have to agree to these terms in order to apply. So it's kind of helping you out there for any future cases where you need to refer back to it. So that's our recommendations for what to include in your prospectus. Again, you can include a lot more than this. You don't have to include everything that I've said. These are just some ideas to make sure that your call for entry has enough detail that artists are informed and excited to apply to your call. This is also something, just so you know, to understand artists, and I'm sure you do, artists don't necessarily read the entire prospectus before applying. So, I do sometimes recommend not bombarding them with too much information so that it's, difficult to read. But if you do have enough information that you can refer back to and say, hey, this is all outlined ahead of time, you should be good to go. And the other thing I will say is once you've filled out your event information, application editor, product editor tabs, everything is verified, good to go. Go ahead and click preview call to view that published version as it would be published. Same thing with application editor, you can preview that, make sure all the form questions are set up. Obviously we don't have anything set up right now, but just make sure it looks good. And then you're good to publish your call and submit the publish request. Another note, real quick, a little tip is when you submit your publish request, go ahead and verify the accept applications date. So in this scenario here, I said, yes, by next Friday, I want this call to go live. So I'm going to set it to next Friday. Let's say next Friday rolls around. I've not gotten on top of my work and I'm behind. So I end up publishing it the following Friday, like into August. And I submit my publish request and it goes live, but the accept applications date is back in July. That's not really good because yes, while the call will be published and will be good to go, I'm not going to be included in the weekly opportunities email that goes out to artists. That email goes out every Tuesday and lists recently published calls and upcoming deadlines. And so if I want to be in that upcoming or recently published call section, my accept applications date was maybe too far in the past. It might be already over a week ago because that's what the email uses is the accept applications date. So if I'm not publishing my call till, let's say, August 1st, I need to update my accept applications date to the 1st so that when I submit my publish request, that date is accurate and I'm actually included in that email. So that's one other little tip there. That's all the information I have about, what to include in your prospectus. I see a question in our chat, so I'm going to answer that. Question is, when I copy from a previous call, will the prospectus also be copied? Yes, so all the information you see will be copied over. The only thing I will say is that it's really only your logo will be removed. It won't copy over is what I'm saying. So you'll have to re-upload your logo. But other than that, all of your organization info, call details, any additional settings, those will all be copied. All of your categories you set up and your application questions will still be set up. And then the only exception is, work sample requirements and jury type. That will be copied unless you ask us on the form for new work sample requirements, and then we'll update it for you. So it won't, exactly be the same when you get in there, but we'll have it updated for you. But the products will all be set up still. You just need to verify those are good to go. So it will be essentially just a fresh copy of a call that you've had on CaFÉ before. This is our webinar on how your opportunity gets from the call request form to the template and eventually your published call. I hope you gained some good nuggets of information to take and use for the next time you do this process. If you have any other questions for us that you'd like to discuss with our team, you can email us at cafehelp@wearecreativewest.org. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. Be sure to join our next webinar. Our next one will be in September, and I hope to see you there.